From chapter 38, you write, each spirit consciously or unconsciously chooses and thus creates its need to be where it is in the hierarchy of infinite awareness. And yet, where it is, which is determined by previous choices and decisions, appears to be limited to certain present choices and decisions within a fabric and pattern of karmic possibilities. There is neither freedom nor transcendence in this. Each spirit exists in a mini-world or a universe of processes and patterns, causes and effects, which already set up, determined, desired, or created by the spirit, illusorily appear to be outside or set apart from the spirit. My question is, can one become more aware of this mini-world of processes and patterns and causes and effects that are self-created?
Yes, of course. Yeah, you can study laws of karma, you can study any of the traditions, you can study physics. I mean, that's really the study of karma, cause and effect. Any one of these sciences can be pointing to the same thing, differently. You study electronics, pointing to the same thing, repulsion and attraction, electromagnetism. You can study anything and you see it's all the same thing, coming right back to what nature is, how nature works, and then maybe pointing to its source. That is the mystery of nature. We want to know why nature is nature, and we have this questioning process that goes on because we can't rest in knowing. See? So we have to question, and refusing to see what it is, which is the paradox. See? And the whole idea and the beauty and the majesty of recognizing the paradox of spirit, that it is everything and nothing simultaneously, really brings peace to mind. But maybe you have to evolve to a certain point where you want the easiest realization that cuts through all of the machinery of searching, so that you can just be here. The idea is, well, which would you rather be? A neurotic in search of that which you can never find unless you stop? Or just be what's already stopped, see, be what it already is. What is now stop in terms of like now? Be already what now is. Can you do that? And from nowness, maybe keep your mind open to learning about, let's say, scientific discoveries along the way, whether they deal with the microbial, whether they deal with the, let's say, the physical, or they deal with the etheric, which is then the astrophysical, light. It's all the same. It's not one is better than the other. They're all basically reflecting to the same thing from different angles of, let's say, intelligence, different angles of perception, and different points of views relative to individuals who have certain disposition towards this, that, or whatever. See, but again, there's a heart to all of it, and they're all looking for the heart, which is never anywhere else but here now.
What do you mean that it, meaning this mini-world or universe, illusorily appears to be outside or set apart from the spirit?
I'm talking about self-perception. And what I just said, having the disposition to seek. See, being in such a position where what you see is not enough. And so you want to put the microscope on, you want to see what it's made out of. I mean, by now we should realize that everything has a spirit as a source. That means the infinite, incomprehensible paradox of itself. It's just there, it's nothing. We're tracing everything down to nothing. I mean, once you trace anything down to nothing, you know all there is to know. See? And then any additional knowledge, scientifically or materialistically acquired or used, then becomes functional to the individual in a certain way. So, well, it's really all about nothing. The essence is nothing. Spirit, pure, clear, being. Zero. Everything comes out of zero. And that's the biggest paradox, the paradox of life. From nothing, from life as a nothing, everything seems to have manifested out of it, come out of this void, and it's continually going back to the void, continually returning to itself. And we're part of this continual living and dying process of realizing the void, realizing the heart itself. That which is beyond thought, mind, and world altogether in terms of how things appear to us, which disappear. Anything that is appearing is already disappearing. Everything that appears which disappears, is really what we need to come to terms with. Everything appears to disappear. The universe is no less that kind of question in our face. What you see is always appearing and disappearing.
What about fate? Is there truly such a thing?
Fate? Well, we have to consider, if we're going to be realistic relative to time bodies, well then we have a certain time limit here, let's say 150 years at best. Back in the days, we heard of people living 300, 500 years. And people that were, tens of feet tall back in the days. Supposedly, these are legends. Flying beings, legends. Flying things, say. And so all of this is part of it, part of our particular situation in terms of a universal perception and who we are and what it is that we are, and coming to terms with the reality that we're here in a cosmic situation. Even though we want to limit ourselves to what we're perceiving physically, the basis is cosmic in every case. It is just the universe. There's no escaping the universe, and there's there's only contending and resting in what we are as the universe, not just the selves. We see that the self is a conditional thing, but so is the universe. And what is spirit in this case then is being part of this universe, beyond changes, until we are not able to use the vantage point of the living body as such, but then after the living body goes, we also have now evidence that then there are subtle bodies. And then we have to deal with the laws of the subtle planes, not just the physical, because then we step out of the physical, which we do every night to a certain degree, but then we're going to do forever in this form when death shows up. The final, let's say, act, we might call it, when that arises. And that's what people need to prepare for, What happens, or what is going to happen? What did we agree is supposed to happen? What did we agree to that is going to happen according to law, and very specifically speaking, our agreement? When the time comes to abandon the body for keeps, then who are we, let's say, in service to? Who are we then beholden to? And what laws do we have to somehow or other readapt to? Because you don't hear very many people talking about, well, when you get to the next plane, it's going to be this way, that way, and the rest of it. It's going to be clear. You got to go to this person, you got to go to this being, and then, as if it were real. Nobody's doing that. You have some religious references to it, and, excuse me, coming from the spiritualist background, that was the big deal. This is not the big deal. The earth plane is not the deal. This is like a first step on a journey to infinity. It's not the big deal. This is a physical starting point for many beings. There may be lower starting points, but this is a physical starting point, and then from here it's nobody, because you're leaving your body here. That means you've agreed to be nobody, ultimately. And you have to contend with what that means as a nobody. And we have the spirits all around talking through these ghost chasers and mediums since who knows when, and speaking their piece, that they are out here, they're marooned out here. What's up with that? And so we need to be aware of what it is, that we are talking about in terms of like preparing for a paradox event, a huge paradox event, having no body, giving up your body, thinking you're going to die and it's going to be over, and it's just starting. But you don't have a body, but you have an awareness. And then where do you go from that awareness? Now, there are a lot of theories and propositions relative to that. And some people will say, well, you need a guide. And so, you have to find a guide that can help you through that. And so then maybe you have a handle before you die that you need a guide. And the religions, they feel that, or they teach that you're going to meet guides that are part of their system, right? And that you will, as a result of being a member of a certain thing, absolutely, guaranteedly be taken to a certain place. No one really knows that. Some people will say they know that, but when people are ordinary people who don't have that kind of background or that kind of a belief system, they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know, because that is not the focus in this lifetime. This focus in this lifetime is to live your life completely, have fun, live for today, and then poof, you're gone. And it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't mean anything. You're gone. But we know that that's not the case. Absolutely, it's not the case. That's relatively the case. And then some of these beings come back in dreams, they come back and they guide, they come back and they finish your business here in different forms. We know that is also the case because we have plenty of testimony to that fact. So it's not about whether it's scientifically proven, it's whether it's psychically correct or not. I would say psychically, it's absolutely the case. We're just beginning here, people. This is the first step. Except for those who are extremely into, let's say, the process of knowing that we are multiple bodies in a situation of multiple planes of consciousness, and we're in multiple worlds, and there are multiple universes to boot on top of that we have to, in some form or other, navigate our way through. Go ahead.
From chapter 38, you write, any spirit, human, or being who therefore even momentarily believes in or presumes separation or self-contraction relative to or against the free state or condition of all is already a fallen spirit living in sin, unhappiness, and ignorance. My question is, can you describe what the free state or true condition of all is?
The all is? Well, you have to imagine the all is. Is that a question? Condition, right. Well, we have to use language now, which is very awkward. It's a feeling of completeness, perfection, greatness, simultaneously. Excellence. Light, pure light, radiance. Some would call it enlightenment. I tend to call it ensoundment for my purposes. Ensoundment, right? Pure peace, heavenly splendor. Rapture, you can say, but we're talking about constant. It's not just a moment of rapture or ecstatic bliss. No, it's constant. It is reality. So it is the bliss of being. We're talking emptiness, right? So it's really a matter of seeing this as, again, one of the great paradoxes of spirit. And we can practice that already. If we can practice, let's say, stillness to the degree we start to see our future, then you're getting to a point in your practice, because all of it can be revealed for those who are open to it and are receptive and patient with the process of seeing beyond their material limits and their karmic, that is, their cultural differences. And you can start to receive something of let's say, the greatness of being human. That's not just physical, animal, but a spiritual and celestial being too, because we are the stars and we are the source of the stars. In a deeper sense than we can ever know, because many beings dream of, let's say, other galaxies. They dream of it because they're connected to it. It's not just looking out, seeing it physically. What you see out there reflects what you are and where you come from, in a manner of speaking. And when you stop seeing and you see from the inner eye of being, transcendent seeing, then you're okay being here, because you're no longer here either. You're not a part of what's happening here. So you've gone beyond here, and you're in the spirit. You're here in the body, but as a spirit, which I think is actually the highest of the starting points in creation.
From chapter 38, you write, there is pure intelligence of itself now and always, and whatever is sin appears and disappears with the mind and its limited ability to conceive, think, rationalize, and discriminate. My question is, are you saying that sin isn't real?
Well, it is and it isn't. Sin is real, yeah. In other words, you can make a mistake. You feel it right away. See? You can feel it. It's painful. In some way. I mean, you're in the world of repercussions when you're sinning. That means you're missing the point of waking up. You're asleep to what's around you, so you make mistakes. You don't see the wall you're about to bump into, see? You don't see the boulder in front of you, see, that you'll be hit, see? When you're sleeping, then you are in a state of sin. So the biggest ignorance, or biggest sin, is ignorance, see? In this case, not knowing, not wanting to see, not wanting to wake up and take responsibility for what it is. So there is sin. We see it all around us. People are missing the point. They're suffering When you have suffering, you have sin. You've sinned against yourself when you're suffering something. You need to go back on the time track and see what you did to hurt yourself. See? When you're beyond suffering, then you're doing the correct thing. See? Then, let's say, repercussions are minimal, if any. When you're awake, then you see what you need to see and you respond to the faculty of awakeness properly. You see, you understand, you hear, you know, and so on. So we're talking about spiritual awakeness. Is different from physical awakeness. Okay. Spiritual awakeness means being able to be in all places at once. No place at once at the same time. All places, no place at once. So you're not wanting to be anywhere because you are. You are the everywhereness because you've recognized the nowhereness of your true nature. It's nowhere. Okay. You recognize the no self of your true nature. There is no self. That means you're a pure soul itself, pure radiant light, soul and spirit. Okay. While you're alive.
From the end of chapter 39, you write, some spirit beings may be asleep, but they will awaken. Some appear to awaken, and they will be put to sleep to awaken again, until they have genuinely awakened in and as spirit to their liberated perfectness. Their perfectly realized beingness as what and who is the free and divine self of all. My first question is, why would some spirit beings be awakened only to be put back to sleep to awaken again?
That happens every night in everyone's case. You're put back to sleep, you have no choice but to sleep, to leave the body. That's a law. You must leave the body. So that means your body is something you borrow, and you have no choice, you can't control it beyond a point. So you leave the body by law, that means because your spirit by nature, true nature, you have to leave the body. You have to, and that's the great mystery, that's the great secret. You are nobody. It's not your body. So when you go to sleep, you vacate your body, but of course, you have a debt to be here. And so you have to, as purgatory, earth, you can call it whatever you want, but purgatory, earth, you have a chance to wake up again, before you die, so to speak, into sleep again, that evening, or whenever you're taken out, you can be taken out and put to sleep, see, to come back to do better, if you can, and change your way so that you close the gap between wakenness and sleepfulness, so that you can maybe be awake. Despite your sleep, your body's need to sleep, you can be spiritually awake. Not informed with a bunch of verses from any school book, but to be awake. See, as the living in the let's say the demonstration of like the wisdom of the ages. See, you're awakened to your wisdom nature, not from any school, but from itself. See, wisdom itself. See, and you become a school unto yourself, and you have to take what comes with that. See. Because then you're responsible for yourself, to yourself. Your divine nature is given back to you in a manner of speaking, because then you know what others can't know, because they don't want to know that. Right? Others who can't know are those who'd rather be asleep. Right?
How is it determined when one is worthy of awakenment, or rather ready to awaken?
Well, the awakenment process, interesting enough, is something that happens spontaneously when you have let go of sleeping as a viable sort of, let's say, program. So it's all in the letting go. And that means it's all in the opening. Can you open to spirit well enough to transcend yourself in your suffering? That means your history, your past, your present and your future. That means your earthliness. You often see characterized in the certain religious traditions where there's the spirit rises, goes up. It means it leaves all the materialism for exaltation of spirit and greatness. That means there's something other than the earth that is very, very important. See here. Maybe it's the inter-earth, maybe it's interplanetary as such, but we know it's celestial for sure. So we have to reclaim our celestial nature, not merely our religious nature, because there may not be any religious nature in what is celestial. It may be just transcendent, see? Where there's no thought, there's no having to think and feel like a human being, because you're no longer a human being. So you've gone beyond human nature as such. We are still maybe perhaps responsible to the heartness, but it's not as a human anymore. Then you are true to your nature as a spirit. And when you're there, you're there. You're not exactly human. But you can have that realization here. But then you're not altogether human. You're more spirit in the human realm. And then you speak of spiritual things beyond culturing. And then you have to take what comes with that. And we know what happens to certain masters who speak in those terms freely and openly. They put themselves sometimes at risk. Therefore, you have people who have to go into secret in order to teach these things. And they have from time to time over the ages had to resort to secrecy because the masses, those who want to remain asleep, cannot see the purpose to such, let's say, incomprehensible or, let's say, paradoxical knowledge.
Is it the master or the individual that determines that it's one's time to awaken?
Usually the karma determines that. No, the master can give you direct knowledge, and that could awaken you. Once you hear it straight from a master, you can have an awakening. Because we're not saying one causes the other, necessarily. So maybe what we're talking about arises without cause, because it is the representation of that which is causeless. So it appears in time, but it may be without cause. In other words, it arises of itself. And thus, what happens before that is the opening to that which, and accepting that which can arise of itself. Even if it may never arise. At least you give it the opportunity to arise. Say, I'm open, I'm receptive. And it may or may not arise. And then, beyond that, it may arise of itself when you are at the least of any degree of preparation for it. Because you could be chosen. That's why I say it's the universe, it could be karma. And a spontaneous awakening, not because of yourself, but because of the universe needing you to awaken. Because you are part of the whole picture. So it's not something that you have to think about and say, well, it makes sense. No, the divine is no sense. That's why many refer to it as a miraculous, because it doesn't make sense to humans. But it is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. We need to understand we are going to pass over as a result of fear, right? We're calling it passing over and having fear of that. See? We're going to be maybe having a shock when the time comes. If we approach passing over as not passing over, but just continuing our universal sort of trek, then there's no fear involved in that. So then you welcome it. So yes, it's time to go on. It's a beautiful thing. Now I have to move on to other maybe better places, and maybe other beings, maybe better beings even. What do we know? Right? Being open, see, to, let's say, the spirit of what it is, see, as something which is ongoing. Maybe we can use the word eternal in this case, but I don't want to put a limit on it because it's not something that the human comprehends by way of its own faculties. It doesn't comprehend it. See? So it's beyond our reach, but yet we are it, which is a big mystery. How can we be it, and yet it's beyond us at the same time? Good question.
From chapter 40, you write, the concept or reality of soul ordinarily pertains more to the concept of a self as representing the center, heart, source, point, cause, or effect, intelligence, understanding, moral, and universal consciousness, whereas the truth or reality of spirit pertains more generally to the life principle, force, power, or intensity of light and sound beingness itself.
Well, you have a question,
yes.
Please.
My question is, how does the word spirit, as you were describing it, compare or relate to the word spirit, as in, say, for example, team spirit or the spirit of America? Is the word spirit, when used in a cultural sense, something that's completely different from what you're describing, or are there similarities between the two?
Well, there's a spirit, I mean, it's the presence of something itself, Right? There's a spirit of a dog, let's say the spirit of a rock. For some people, there's a spirit of a tree. Right? There may be some residue left over. Some light could be seen after you cut the tree. You might see the form of the tree there in an etheric or astral manner. No, the spirit, when we speak about the greater, the Holy Spirit, we mean the total picture, see, the reality itself, the reality of is, see, that is reality, the is reality itself, the divine itself, the all-being itself, the all-knowing nothing. That means there are no words for it, but we are the presence of it. See, we stand in awe and wonder at a sunset, or we see something magnificent happening in nature, like waterfalls, humongous waterfalls, and we hear it, and we sense the freshness of it, the glory of it, and so on. We see that. See, we see a starburst. We see comets fall. We say, wow, awful, awesome, right? Wow, crazy, mad. See, and so we say, yeah, this is maybe a form of the spirit that is mind-boggling. See, mind-blowing. See, appearance of spirit, but that anything that is already mind-boggling. The fact that you can wake up and be here is mind-boggling. So we're talking about the spirit then of transcendence, see, and grace, gratitude, see, realizing the miracle of the moment. See, that's the spirit we're talking about. Miraculous, see, presence, and we're here, still here, see, and we're fulfilling this great process of living a life. And trying to, from the highest vantage point of consciousness, spread goodness throughout our time on earth. See? Bring goodness and peace and happiness to the world to some degree, in some small measure, by what we do, what we say, what we think, what we feel, and what we represent to certain people, maybe our family and friends. Right?
From chapter 41, you write, death is an experience in and of consciousness, whereas the illusions of time, space, energy, matter, and mind are confronted, questioned, and passed through. Death's release opens the door to subtle, higher, or real states of consciousness. However, death is also the bridge to self-created horrors and hellish mind scenery. Death in this way is like sleep, but only greater by intensity, reality, and duration. My question is, when you say that death is a bridge to self-created horrors and hellish mind scenery, are you referring to individual karmic debt? In other words, when one dies, are they faced with having to pay for all their wrongdoings in life?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Perhaps the weight of mental karma or the influences of ignorance of the spirit world may have their way with the newly dead. We're talking about anticipation here in terms of what people don't know about death. But people feel about death because it's not what death is, it's what they feel and perceive death is. Death may be a very graceful process, but in the world of unenlightened beings and ignorance, it's the worst case because it seems to be the end of everything people know. Okay? So they see it as the ultimate loss, when it may be an ultimate gain. See? So it's a paradox. Okay? Death is then enlightenment. Right? Death of the self is liberation. Okay? Okay? And expanding into infinite heart space. And people don't know until they get to that point. See? And again, making it, relating death to the horrors. Well, people are horrified by the idea of death and termination and cessation. See? So it's not that death is that, but people think of it as such, and so it is horrible. When you see certain forms of death, you're horrified by it. See? We are horrified by devastation, catastrophic devastation, because that's the way certain beings have to be released from this debt of life on earth. See? Sometimes we're not conscious of our choice. Sometimes we are. And people say that they're going to die a certain way, and they actually die that way. So they have evidence that transcends their time, about their time, as the last moment in this lifetime, see, on Earth. See? So it depends always on the individual and what people fear, and then what they are, like people who have near-death experiences. You hear that they leave the body, they get up, and so you have the reverse there when they go into the light, and doctors are now certifying that that is more the case. See? You have to wait for the doctors to come around, and sometimes the scientists are the last ones to know something that was already common sense many, many thousands of years before. So there's no death. There's the death experience, because you have to transit from this vehicle to the next dimension. See, but that is not necessarily death. That's passing, and passing into, let's say, a higher level of consciousness, a light without the flesh, which means there could be more intelligence for some, and more, let's say, again, seeing of light. Once you're free of that which prevents you from seeing light, which could be the flesh. And in other cases you have the meditations that enable you to see that the body is already the light, and then that might more or less enable you to transcend having to be concerned about seeing light later on, because you're living from the light, and that the light is the real continuity, or the real continuum between beings and dimensions of consciousness.
From chapter 41, you write, if the infinity or sacred mystery of things, existence and life is to be valued as true, then certainly there cannot be an end to life at so-called death. Real possibilities of subtle and powerful experiences come before, during, and after death. It is in psycho as well as physical death that the truth of one's destiny as not only a human but a spiritual being is realized. However, this basic realization is realizable here and now. This is what is meant by the term omnipresence. The divine, essential, supreme being and free spirit fluid of itself is already here and now. Indeed, each will progress to the next stage and series of lessons on the long but joyous journey towards universal consciousness realization, which precedes the supremely humorous, paradoxical, transcendent realization and blissful response to the very truth of God, who is only isness. My question is, how does one realize the truth of one's destiny before death?
Well, it depends on what you choose to realize, or what you're ready to realize before death. And that, I think, is what we have just discussed already. See, being open to it as much a way of your living process as, let's say, the end of it, but as much as a person can bear, maybe the beginning of a whole, new appreciation for life when you start opening more properly, see, in a sacred manner to death. See, then you might start to be less fearful. See? And if you're given a glimpse of the other world, so to speak, through, let's say, some kind of near-death experience, or by way of your intuition, because you can hear about a near-death experience and then feel you had something similar to it. It can awaken something in you. Because we're doing it every night. We're having nearly near-death experiences every night when we leave the body. We just don't have the recollection of it. See? We don't seem to have the need to know. Maybe we don't want to know. Maybe we will see things we feel will confuse us or scare us. See? So we have barriers up. We have shields up. We are part of the, let's say, the resistance. See, that we are born. And maybe it's not your own. Maybe it's your ancestors. And it's passed through the blood and the psychic implications of, say, family, karma. And whether or not you have enlightenment in the family or unenlightenment in the family, that might determine how you view things such as life and death, light and darkness. See? So you need to be open to what it is in every case, see? So that you can open yourself in the moment, like here and now, to a more positive attitude of life and death, death and life, death as life, life as death. See? And these are the paradoxes that you need to be reconciled with and feel okay with. Say, yes, I'm going to die. I'm dying now. The cells are dying now. The body's being regenerated now. See? And there are cells in the brain that are dying all the time. So we need to be up front with it. Say, death is good, it's nature. See, it's inevitable. It's part of the beauty of being. Right? And it's going to happen whether we like it or not. So you have to yield to the process, the inevitable reality. That we are nature, but then we might be more than that. And that's the big question and the big mystery. You might actually be more spiritual than you ever imagined you are. Yeah.
From chapter 41, you write, the unenlightened resistance to change, growth, or expansion of consciousness is what leads to the pain of death, which is, for most, the ultimate change of state or being. Death being the release of spirit soul being from the limits and attachments of the body will prove to be the most liberating and pleasurable experience of all. Death by itself warrants no fear. Death is nature. Death is the body. Death is the I am. The illusions of unenlightened incarnate beings warrant fear. The illusions of such beings are fear. Natural death warrants enthusiasm as it marks the time of inner awakening, spiritual joy, and direct realization of the vulnerable illusion of mortal existence relative to cosmic law and spiritual progress. Death brings with it that startling and shocking realization that what reality is not merely the mortal body. It is transcendent or divine conscious awareness. Thus, death is graduation and liberation into the body of truth of what is, and what is thus not the self body. My question is, are you saying that no matter where someone is in life in terms of their level or state of consciousness, that they will experience some measure of spiritual progression upon physical death?
It's happening all the time, but people don't see it in those terms. Yeah. We are, let's say, by culture, isolating the spiritual, in a sense. We are the spiritual every second we breathe and live. It is the spiritual. We just don't see it that way. We think we're just human. Without the spiritual, you'd be nothing. In fact, in the spiritual, you are nothing. See? You're quintessentially, just something which is wood for the fire of the universe. See? So we are spiritual beings. See? We are animated beings. We are living beings, and life is spirit. See? In the cosmic sense, see? It is all spirit. See? It's all subtle, super subtle. See? We are super consciousness, but not awake as super consciousness, but we are related to super consciousness. See? Spirit is a fact. See? That there is no body, and yet we are the body. So we're talking about the paradox of the body as no body. Leaving the body at night to do better things that we are not conscious of, so we enter an unconscious sort of level of reality. We have no control over it for the most part. See? You might train yourself to have control over it, but you have to go where you have to go because it's based upon what your agreements are, which is to sleep. You agree to sleep, then you might change that by way of training so that you have an agreement to awaken, and then that becomes a force where it awakens you. See? So you have then mind over matter to include sleep. So say you need to sleep, but you don't need to sleep asleep. You might be able to sleep awake. That's another proposition. You might be able to sleep awake. You might be able to be conscious in death and beyond death, where you enter consciousness, because you're open to it. Because you see that that's part of what you are. You're just awakeness. You are soul, awareness, pure awareness. And that might be something you can bring yourself into by training, remembering. See?
From chapter 41, you go on to write, a physical body severed from its intelligence or soul is mere organic life, vegetating as it will without self or soul awareness. A spirit soul may take time to enter the organic life of a complete birth as karmas permit, or a spirit soul may leave the organic life or physical body any time before death occurs. The body as the organic life is a heart breath sustained machine which operates quite automatically and involuntarily without command or even the desire of a spirit soul being attached to it. Few know, recognize, or control their breathness. Fewer breathe consciously. My question is, what do you mean by few know their breathness? Do you mean few are aware of their breathing, or are you referring to something else, a knowingness that's more than just awareness?
The answer is yes. It is a knowingness that is more than just, your average self-awareness. So, in other words, breathing as the universe is the correct form of breathing. That means it is key to self-liberation, breathing as the universe. Going out with your breath, not holding on to your body that breathes, but going out with your breath, because then you are the breath. To be the breath is to be spirit. To be spirit is to be genius. To be genius is to be aware. Conscious. Awareness can lead you to awakeness. You are then the universe as a conscious, superconscious individual, being. You're just superconsciousness. You're not a thing, you're just superconsciousness of itself. But you don't have average people following the breath in that way and seeing the breath as what was just stated. You don't see that ordinarily. You have to be brought to that understanding by way of a practitioner or an awakened person, or by common sense, let's say. I mean, the medical profession now is becoming much more, let's say, spiritually awakened. And so this comes as no news to those who are in the medical business as MDs or PhDs, who are now awakening to the higher dynamics of intelligence relative to spirituality and certain levels of creative awareness. This is common now. And it's always been known to the natives, many natives.
In the last part of chapter 41, you write, as time and space is illusion, each spirit soul, upon graduating or dying from this dimension, meets under certain conditions other more or less familial spirit souls who have already graduated. Hence, the future holds within it the seeds, fruits, and effects of the past, just as the past holds within it the keys, fruits, and seeds of the present. However, the present is the bridge between all realities or illusions of time and space. Therefore, it is in the now is that any and all considerations relative to the time, space, energy, matter, or reality of any dimensions are made. My question is, are these familial spirit souls that one meets upon dying always blood related, or are they familial in another sense?
No, they're not always blood related. They may be familial in a higher sense. Yes, they may be. See, at the heart level, everyone is family. Okay? When you get to that point. So you find, let's say, certain beings who are considered enlightened beings, they are family with every being. See, of course, that is with proper distinction of those who are not, getting ready to kill them. But in some cases, they go beyond that too. They defy death in certain cases. They're not afraid. See? Yes, we're talking about from the point of view of realization, then all beings are family. They're basically all the same. They're just colorless beings out here. They're all potentially good beings. Given the culturing, let's say adaptation or modification, they can be brought to similar conclusions in states of awareness. And so you have in prisons certain kinds of meditation programs that are definitely, let's say, consciousness, intelligence, and many of those who began as brutes and barbarians, beasts of ignorance, and then evolved to a certain state of, let's say, responsibility and spiritual intelligence and integrity and creative wherewithal, and become humanized. So we're talking about in the terms of your question, then there are other beings from different dimensions that are much closer to you than your family. They know you much better than your family could ever know, because your family is sometimes a dead on the material plane.
Is that what you would refer to as a spiritual family?
I would say it's more akin to spiritual family in a way. We're coming from different backgrounds, even different cultures, but with the resonance, that's almost perfect resonance. And around them you start to feel a certain kind of lift. If you're in resonance with them, you can feel the lift. See? Yeah. Comment?
No comment. Thank you.
Okay. Phew.
Thank you.